Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the DC Powerplay. I'm your host, Subir, and you can find me on Twitter at PleaseWinDC. As usual, I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Drew and Amanda. They're also on Twitter. You can find Drew at RoboStop10, and Amanda is AWhite7877. Just so you know, everyone, we do this podcast for one of the top sports websites in the district, dmvsportsnetwork.com. And they can be followed on Twitter at DMV_SN. They have a lot of great daily content about all things DC sports, in addition to college sports as well. So please be sure to subscribe to our show, the DC Powerplay, wherever podcasts are available, which includes Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and SoundCloud. And we also post this audio on YouTube as well now. So let's dive right into the three-game recap, starting with the Florida Panthers game that the Caps hosted. This was a 5-4 overtime loss for the Caps, and they were actually down 4-2 at one point in the third period. So they actually had to force overtime just to salvage a point. The Panthers scored a power play goal in overtime, who were 1 for 4 overall on the power play, and the Caps only had one power play chance, and they were 0 for 1. A bright spot in that game was Connolly with 3 points, and Eller and Burakovsky as well with 2 points each. So that's the third line that played pretty well in the overtime loss. Drew, what are some of your thoughts from that game?
I mean, I thought it was a pretty typical way that they've been playing over the last few weeks. They didn't play very well the first half of the game, and they were down, 3-1. If not for Eller getting that last minute goal, they would have gone in down 3-1. Even in the start of the third, they gave up a goal 7 seconds into the period. It's just, I don't know, they're just lacking in concentration, execution at times. They were lucky to get a point out of that game because Florida has been, in their games they've played against them this year, have outplayed them. They've just been playing, much better, and the Caps have just been inconsistent. And I just thought that they easily could have not gotten any points out of that game against Florida. So, I was happy to see the one, but their play is still uneven.
Yeah, I agree. Just to give up 4 goals, as soon as the third period starts is not good defensive hockey. It's way too much. Amanda, what do you think?
I agree mostly with everything that Drew said there. Just inconsistent play, sloppy at times, bad line changes, lazy with the puck. I think it was that one that came 7 seconds in to the third that they won the face-off, and then Kempney just shanked on the puck, and they ended up scoring. So it's not been pretty hockey. They were lucky to get out of this one with 1 point. I don't think, frankly, that they probably deserved even the one. The third line was incredible. They've been the best line for the Caps this past week for sure, in all the games, I think. But except with the exception of Kuznetsov, who before we won't talk about that last game, but has been really, really good other than that last game they just played. So,
the other thing,
sorry, go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off, Amanda, but the other thing too is they are taking this. Let me just say this. I know that the officiating has been very uneven, even more so this year than I can remember. However, they can't be taking offensive zone penalties because they're lazy penalties. Connolly takes the one at the end of the third.
Right.
I know I know by probably it's a slash. It's not the most egregious one I've ever seen, but they're calling it, and they have been at least consistently
you should
calling.
know that they're calling that now.
Those.
That was just a bonehead.
Yeah, and it's just you're just killing yourself by committing these lazy penalties.
And that wasn't even in the defensive zone, I don't think.
No, it was in the offensive zone. Oh, and then the other egregious one that I thought was just utter garbage was Juice getting an elbow penalty with the player running into his hand.
He didn't even look at or move towards the guy. The guy just ran into him on the boards, and they called him for an elbow.
I almost threw my remote in my television.
Yeah, that one was hard to take.
Yeah, and even though Panthers weren't 100% on the power play, it's just the fact that you're on the penalty kill so much.
Oh yeah.
And you have no offensive rhythm coming out of it, and they really don't create too much momentum even on their own power plays, the Caps. So taking too many penalties is just bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. And Connolly, he's been really good lately. He had that awful penalty that pretty much, I would say, cost us the game. There's no way the way they've been playing on defense, that they were going to defend successfully a 4-on-3 in overtime. But he also set a new career high in points in this game with 28. So, he's been doing some good stuff, and then he kind of ruined it at the end there. But it was not an unmitigated bad game, but there was a lot of bad stuff going on here.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that before we move on to the Kings game?
Juice was back. Okay. We didn't mention Juice's return. That was
good. You're right. Yeah.
So 24 games missed with the injury, and he's back in the lineup, which sent Siegenthaler back to Hershey.
Right.
Where, in case anybody cares, he scored his first goal of the season in his first game for Hershey when he got back down there.
Oh yeah, I heard that. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so moving on to another high-scoring game at Capital One Arena was a 6-4 victory this time for the Caps, who played an LA Kings team who's just really at the bottom, almost at the bottom of the league, at least in the Western Conference. So again, this was a high-scoring game. It was back and forth. The Kings had pockets of dominance. I mean, there were instances where they were running circles around the Caps and eventually scoring on that shift.
Mm-hmm.
So at least the Caps were able to come out with 2 points there, kind of just outscore them. Ovechkin with 3 points and Kuznetsov with 4. So like we said, Kuzi stayed really hot. Some other positives from this game were the Caps won the faceoff percentage. Actually, every center for the Caps was 50% or better this game.
That's a nice change.
Yeah, that's really rare to see. And Connolly stays hot. Like we mentioned, he had 3 points in the previous game. He stayed hot this game, and Christian Juice gets his first goal of the season.
That little poke goal, which was fun.
Yeah, one of those fluky pokes, but he'll take that. Ovechkin was right there in the net front. But anyway, Amanda, what'd you think about this game?
My first note that I made on this is 3 hooking penalties in the first period. It is just unacceptable. The penalties that they're taking, and you could see that Reardon was pretty pissed about it. He's benched people at this point for the penalties, and I don't understand why the penalties seem to be so bad right now and why they can't seem to get it under control. I did see on Twitter that it seems that they're actually haven't taken only one more at this point this year than they had last year, which the eyeball test seems totally different. It feels like they are taking tons more than they normally would. But that one they're at 210 after this game. I have to add whatever they had in the last game, but that's a lot of penalties. Ovechkin got a power play goal in this game, which was good to see. The power play's been pretty anemic for quite a while now. Who else? Connolly, as you mentioned, had another really great game. He's having a career year, even to top the career year he had last year. He's been kind of a nice surprise, although he does take a lot of penalties in addition to doing some good stuff lately. And Copley was in net for this one, and
right.
Kind of felt like he got hung out to dry a little bit. They were not playing good defense. The offense got hot enough to outscore them, but giving up 4 goals again is not good.
No, Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, it was an interesting game considering that the only Capital with a minus in that game was Kempney. Everyone else was even or plus player, considering there were 10 goals scored in this game. I would expected to see a lot more people in the minus side, but there's only one. Amanda's already kind of gone through some of the other things. The face-off percentage was much better than what they've normally been doing of late. The one glaring thing that I noticed outside of the penalties is their giveaways. They're just not taking care of the puck very well. Mm-hmm. We had 18 giveaways to LA 7 in that game.
Wow.
Which means that they're not the passes aren't there. They're either they don't make it. They're behind. They're ahead. Those sorts of things. They got to clean up, giving the puck up, and it means a lot if you have it, the other team doesn't, and you get to dictate. The other part is their forecheck needs to kind of get on track. There's really not much of one right now. I don't know if that is a product of Reardon not being the defensive coach anymore, and now you have Cashman, who I'm not really enamored with. Personally, if I had my way, I'd probably fire him, get somebody else in there that can get the defense
It's hard
kind
to
of
argue with the results. It's been terrible. Their defense looks awful.
Yeah, or I know that Reardon probably likes to let his assistants do their thing. I mean, I don't want Adam Oates like you're coaching the goalies, you're coaching everything. That's really not what I want. However, since Reardon coached them last year and there didn't seem to be any issues, now that he's moved up out of that previous role, it seems that the defense is just lost, or looks lost anyway, the way that they're playing. So me personally, something's got to kind of give here. Has to be reassessed. Again, I don't know what Cashman's qualifications are as far as what he did previously before he was pulled up here. But something has to be done about their defense, because defense is just terrible. Just overall as well. I mean, not just the defensive core, because I think Orlov and Niskanen have been the two worst defensive players this year out of the group.
For sure, but we've
team
talked
defense
about the fact that
has been terrible.
Yeah, the defense from the forwards has just been atrocious. It's just they get knocked off the puck easily. They're just not doing their job on the defensive side of the ice at all. And in some games like this one, they did their job on the offensive side of the ice, but on the ones where they aren't, I mean, how many high scoring games have we seen this year from the Caps? A lot more than last year, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And Drew, you kind of mentioned giveaways and how their passing has just not been sharp. And I just feel like in hockey, where so much of it is based off of timing and like speed entering the zone, just if you're not sharp enough, you will not create good enough chances. And I feel like last year, especially during their playoff run, they were so sharp. Their exits out of the zone were always just about perfect. And now it's like, when's the last time we've even seen them have an odd man rush?
I don't even remember.
Yeah, and we used to see like at least 3 or 4 a game.
Mm-hmm.
Vrana has kind of stopped getting his breakaways. He was like averaging 1 a game for a while. And, I know these things kind of even out, but it's just we can see the differences in their game when they're playing well and when they're playing like this.
And speaking of Vrana, he had a sweet goal in this game.
That was my favorite goal.
Me too. That's
like
great
when they're
shift.
at their best.
That whole shift was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that was, in a nutshell, like the Caps at their best. That type of shift right there.
Yeah.
Okay, but unfortunately, they did not have many of those type of shifts in the next game, which was the back-to-back game, this time on the road at Columbus. And this ended up being a 3-0 loss, a complete shutout. From start to finish, the Caps were dominated. It was probably one of the worst offensive games for the Caps this year, similar to the Islanders shutout loss that was about a month ago.
I think this might have been worse.
Maybe even worse.
The number of shots. I think it was 4 shots in the first, 3 shots in the second, and then a little better with 13 in the third. But, I mean, it was just an atrocious offensive performance for him.
It was, and this was another game where it's one of those hope he deserved better type of games because he was great. And we say this too often, which is sad. But honestly, my main takeaway from that game is that Columbus looks hungry and they look very motivated, especially when they play us. Yeah. And, I mean, you can't blame them. The Caps have been in this position where, we feel like it's finally our time and we're going to expel the demons and all that. And Columbus took this game as if it was like a playoff game. And I hate to say it, but like if playoffs started tomorrow and we matched up with Columbus, I don't know if I would feel very confident taking the Caps the way the series.
If the playoffs started tomorrow, I don't know if I would take the Caps against anyone the way they're playing right now.
Yeah, and we can get into that a little bit later. But specifically, Drew, from this Columbus game, getting shut out, how disappointed were you?
I was just kind of, I guess, disgusted is probably the best term. They were horrible. Again, the only reason why this wasn't any worse was because of Braden Holtby. It was nothing all the way into the third. They got a couple empty net goals, so it looks worse than what it was. But Holtby, who didn't play the previous night, so he was rested, he played spectacularly. He is the only reason why it wasn't probably,
It could have
I don't know,
easily been a
6
6 or 7
in the end of 2.
game, yeah.
And how many times have we said that? Like, that counter is pretty high now, too. Just saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he played spectacularly. And they looked a step slow. They looked tired. They just did not look like they really wanted to be there. I mean, you got a team like I don't think they've lost the second of a back-to-back all year.
That's
So I
Trott's
mean,
MO.
they're able. Excuse me, they're able to play on back-to-backs without a problem. Why can't the Caps? I don't know why. Again, they only had one power play. I think that them not skating, not creating chances, not putting forth, again, the effort to do. Their face-off percent, 55%. Just garbage.
Yeah,
terrible.
Garbage. And Ovechkin, who is always, we take for granted that Ovechkin's going to shoot a lot and that he scores a lot. In this game, he didn't even take his first shot on goal until there were 5 minutes to play in the third. I mean, it was just offensively. It was maybe one of the worst offensive performances I can remember from the Caps all year. It was a really, really bad. It was very forgettable. And given the way they played in that game, I'm a little apprehensive about tonight's game against the Sharks. I hope that they've shaken the cobwebs off and that they are through their jet lag and ready to play tonight, because this team is good, and I don't have a good feeling about this game tonight.
Yeah, well, typically they don't play very well in San Jose anyway.
No. Or California at all.
No, but they make us stay up late anyway. But they were completely outclassed by Columbus, and they wanted to let their fans do the Kuznetsov bird flap, pretty much.
Yes. What is it they say, that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery?
That's right.
We'll take it.
Yeah, and they have this hashtag going. It's called Flap on them.
Oh, good grief. I don't know. I feel like that's a little rich, given that you guys got knocked out of the first round last year. Settle down, Columbus.
Yeah. Okay, so before we keep going here, guys, I just want to remind the listeners about the DMV Sports Network's library of podcasts. Right now, we have 9 active shows, and you can find this on the DMVnetwork.com website, sportsnetwork.com website, and we have team shows on the Redskins, the Capitals, Nationals, Wizards and Ravens, and Fantasy Fever. And we have a pair of mixed bag shows called It's About Time DC and Dom and Thunder. We also have a debate show called DMV Dispute, which is available live stream on Twitter. And again, all of the podcasts that I mentioned can be found wherever you listen to podcasts. And we would appreciate any type of review or feedback and to subscribe on any of the platforms. So let's continue talking about some of the Caps' kind of bad habits. Right now, they're literally the most penalized team in the entire league. It's not even like they're middle pack or anything. They're literally dead last. At this point, the interesting stat that we found today was that through 57 games last year, we actually had one more penalty than we do right now. So if you think that we've taken a lot this year, we actually even took more last year, and somehow we won the cup. But you guys, we talk about this almost every podcast about the amount of penalties they take, and we think maybe eventually they'll just snap out of it. But this has been kind of like a season-long problem. Where do you think they need to improve on to stop taking so many penalties?
I think part of the issue is that they're not skating. These are lazy, especially in the offensive zone where you're putting your stick out to slow them down, and you hook their hands, or you tripping them or off or whatever. Just lazy penalties, and they're just not skating. It seems that they're just not forechecking hard enough, and skating hard enough, and
yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I mean, it seems to me that a lot of these penalties are just if they were playing harder, there wouldn't be any need to hook people so much or trip people so much in the offensive zone. That and honestly, it's hard to explain or even understand why they're taking so many. It feels like when you were talking earlier about how they played during the playoff run last year, what I keep thinking about is the defense and the way they were just like, racing back and forth on both ends, and they were blocking shots, and they just seemed so engaged. And you saw fewer penalties, I think, then because they were so everywhere all the time. And right now it just feels like they're a step behind all the time. And that's where I think a lot of the penalties are coming from. Is like you said, you're cheating a little bit, you're slashing or you're hooking or you're tripping because you're trying to stop a goal or a breakaway. And it's because you're not moving your feet.
Yeah, and that's really that's a domino effect from not being crisp with their passes, like we talked about before, or turnovers. Obviously, then you're going the wrong way, and that's when you start hooking and all that. So it's kind of a domino effect. I think if they fix the way that they're playing, like Drew said about how they just need to skate better and skate with more energy, I think that will fix a lot of their issues. And I've looked at some statistics, and I've noticed that when they take 2 penalties or less in a game, they do pretty much all right. Like they'll give up 3 goals max in the game. But when they start taking 4 or 5 penalties in a game, I mean, they're giving up 4 or 5 goals. And it's not just necessarily giving up power play goals, but, it tires you out. And that's when you start getting beat, even strength as well.
Yeah, and you see the penalty kill unit has been really good most of the season. But I really think not only do you get tired from so much penalty killing, but you mess up the rhythm. You're not running your lines 4 in a row. You're not getting any kind of consistency or rhythm out of your forward lines. And, it's this constant interruption of what your game plan was. And then it seems like when they take too many penalties, they don't really get back on their game plan.
I mean, because right now they're taking just over 9 minutes a game in penalties, so that's half a period. So if you're on the penalty kill for half a period, on average, I mean, I know you're not on the penalty kill for exactly half a period. I'm just saying over 60 minutes, that you're right. You're not going into your offensive flow, and your penalty killers are going to get tired the more they have to work on the penalty kill. Because right now the Caps have taken 536 minutes in penalties, and that's 5th in the league. The only teams worse than them are the Rangers, the Bruins, the Canucks, and the Avalanche, who have more. So that is one area where they have got to get under control, because it's just egregious. But the thing is, like you said, it's only like one more. I think it's like one less last year, but they're taking them in bunches. It's just not. It doesn't seem like it's 2 this game and maybe 3 this game. Then they have one with 4. Then they have one with 0. But this year, it just seems that they're taking them in bunches in a game.
I think there was one game they had 8 minors in one game.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it was last month they had it. I can't remember the opponent, but
that game was hard to watch.
And it's also about how untimely they're taking the penalties, whether it's right at the end of a period, or we just took the lead, or we just tied it up, but then we take a penalty. So all these things, I think, can be traced back to their root of just not playing very well, not skating well, rather. But let's try and maybe talk about something positive on this Valentine's Day, and talk about some of the Caps players that are heating up, which include Burakovsky, Kuznetsov, and Connolly. So let's start with Burakovsky, who is obviously, we all know, the biggest trade, thing dangling out there for the Caps. But he's started to play pretty well, whether it's scoring goals or collecting assists, because we've touched on the third line producing. But do you think this has any type of effect? Obviously, it raises his trade value, but overall, Amanda, what have you thought about Burakovsky lately?
It's been nice to see him play better, because I've always liked Burakovsky, but he's just been kind of unable to live up to the potential that everybody could see in him. And when he's playing like he's playing this past week, you can see why he was a first-round draft pick. You can see why everybody was so high on him and why he's a good trade chip. But I I think it's probably too late for him in Washington. I think he's been dangled out there now for the last little while. I think there's probably been a lot of teams that have scouted him, and if there are trade discussions going on, that he's probably front and center in them. So you kind of hate to see him go when he's playing like that, especially because that third line is clicking on all cylinders right now. But I still think he's likely to be in a trade before the deadline.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and guess that Drew thinks if you can get a good defensive piece for him, you should do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't throw my hands up and scream pull my hair out if they did. But, McClellan has said that he wants to get a piece back that's similar in nature. Now, I've seen some rumors Puljujärvi in Edmonton, who's a little bit younger. He was drafted in 2016. They think he might need a little bit of a change of scenery. The advantage to that, too, is that Burakovsky would be reunited with McDavid. They played together in Erie in the minors before both of them were drafted. So that trade would make a little bit of sense where you're trading one for one. So that'd be something to kind of look at as we get towards the deadline. With Burakovsky, like, for example, the last 7 games that he's played, now he's got a goal and 3 assists and 4 points, where over, I think it's like 9 or 10 games in January, he was one goal, 3 assists, and 4 points for the entire month. So he has actually picked his game up. That line in particular has as well, which was so good in the playoffs, especially in Game 7 against Tampa Bay, when he scored his 2 goals in the playoffs last year. But I personally think just this stretch is a positive sign. But he has in his play, it's just he doesn't play consistently. We talked ad nauseum about the fact that he gets kind of pushed off the puck. He doesn't, take the shot quickly enough, or he holds it too long. He's got some deficiencies in his game. So I don't think those deficiencies are not known to anybody in the league. Everybody knows what he brings. Now, the question is that he's so young still that I think that a change of scenery maybe will do him some good. Maybe he turns his game around. I personally would love to trade Burr for Simmons if I had my perfect scenario.
That's one I was going to bring up.
But I don't. Yeah, I don't think Philly trades within the division personally, unless the Capitals offer them deal for him. He's a UFA, so no one's going to offer them the world unless it gets into some sort of a bidding war.
To get it done. So.
No. I would with Simmons' contract, for example. I think that you would have to cough up Burakovsky, potentially someone like maybe Orlov, where you're dumping salary to bring Simmons in just as a rental. Now, whether or not he wants to sign here, one of the advantages that he trains with Wilson in the offseason.
Right. So
there's a little bit of familiarity there, but I just don't see Philly dealing him within the division, but, we'll see.
Yeah, and I'd hate to see, I don't really like true rentals for somebody who's going to be a UFA at the end of the season all that much. And to me, unless they had some sort of deal worked out where he was going to re-sign, I don't know that it's worth giving up Burakovsky for a guy that you only have for a few months, especially in a season, frankly, where the Caps, unless things turn around dramatically, are not looking like another, maybe all the way to the cup run is in them, unless they really make some major changes to the way they've been playing.
When is the deadline? Is it end of this month?
The 25th, I think.
Okay.
It's February 25th.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting. I mean, like we said, it's better that he's playing well, so you can maybe try and get something good for him rather than if he was still struggling. But beside that, guys, let's now talk about Kuznetsov. It's like he entered the week with like 12 or 13 goals, and by the end of the week, he's near like 16 goals. So he really picked up his pace, even strength, power play. kind of, doing Kuzi things, entering the zone, starting to play well. Obviously, no one played well in the Columbus game, but before that, really good to see. He's reunited with the top line. What are your thoughts on Kuznetsov, and how important is it that he's starting to pick up his play?
I mean, we discussed this, pretty much, I think last week, where as this team goes, he does. The way that he plays the game, the way that he can skate. If he's not on top of his game, the offense seems to suffer a little bit. So I think that over the last, like we said, last handful of games, he's stepped up his play. I mean, he's really back to where he kind of was at the end of the playoffs last year. I think, he had 32 points in the playoffs. Over the last handful of games, I think he has, what is it, like almost double-digit points, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I think in the month of February right now, he's got double-digit points. He's got 6 goals and 6 assists for 12 points so far this month. And there's only been 2 games that he can get any points, and that was against Boston and against Columbus, of course, because no points or no goals or anything. So, but he has been playing really well. But the one thing that he's got to be better at is taking penalties. He's got minutes in this stretch, so it's basically averaging almost a penalty a game. That's where he has to clean up some of his play. But he has really kind of stepped his game. I'm happy to see it. I just wish it would get through the rest of the damn lineup. Pardon my French, but it's frustrating to kind of watch, the rest of the team, kind of not catch up to him. But the last thing I'll say before I let Amanda, give her version of this, but with him, I noticed that Reardon had put Ovechkin and Kuznetsov and Wilson back together the last couple of games, and that line in particular has played much better. I mean, I know he's experimenting or whatever, but I think that line and the third line should, I mean, actually all the lines the way they are should stay that way. That's what they were in the playoffs, and let them, skate and let them get out of it, because that lineup was the one that won the cup. I don't see why going away from that benefits them.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I was glad to see that line reunited, that top line. It feels like maybe it got a little stale for a while and they shook it up, but I've been wanting to see. I like the way Wilson plays with those two guys. I feel like Ovi gets more space to shoot when Wilson's on his line, especially maybe now that he took Anderson out. I said on Twitter the other day, I think people might have started to get the impression that Wilson, he's really laid off the big hits and the fighting largely in this, since he came back from the suspension early in the season. And I think people started to maybe think that they could take liberties with the Nats that they normally wouldn't because he was there. So I think he's really kind of disabused everyone of that notion in this past couple of weeks. And, seeing the way he took up for Kuzi in that fight with poor Ian Cole. And, the way he hit Anderson in that Blue Jackets game. I feel like having him up there with Ovechkin is a good thing. It makes space. It makes people worry where Wilson is, and it gives Kuznetsov and Ovi room to do their thing. Kuzi's been, I think he was a +6 after, if I remember reading correctly, after that Kings game, following the All-Star break. So, it almost feels like he came out of that break a different man. He just, I don't know what it is with him. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if he was still feeling the effects of something and the rest from the All-Star break did him good. I don't know. But it feels like he's mentally in a way that it didn't feel like he was going into the break, especially in that long losing streak. So, he's been great. When Kuzi's Kuzi, he's better than anybody. I mean, he's got, he's amazing to watch. His entrances into the zone are one of my favorite things to watch. And, that breakaway goal he got, which game was that? It looked exactly like the one that won Game 6 against the Penguins last year.
That was against the Avalanche.
Yeah, that one was awesome. But that's Kuzi. When you see it, when he's doing his thing, and he He looks like he's doing his thing right now, so I hope he continues. They really need him to be that guy tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. We love MVP form. Kuzi, just please stay out of the penalty box. Okay, so now we can just briefly touch on Connolly. I just don't think we should leave him out because another third liner has been playing really well, picked up his first or second 3-point game of his career. And, making the most of his chances, getting rebound goals, just being around the net. It's really good to see Connolly. Like you said, Drew, earlier, he as well is taking a couple too many penalties. But besides that, it's really good to see Kano, produce because he works really hard and he's got skill and a pretty good shot. And we need that production from him. But any small thoughts on Connolly and how he's been playing?
I think he's of late has been just fantastic. Like I said, we've been talking about that whole line, but really has been playing really, really well. And, considering, he had a slow start to his career with Boston and being a first round pick, I think that being with the Cats has really, really benefited him. His game's kind of come around a lot. So I'm really pleased with, like I said, I'm really pleased with his play, and I just hope he continues to score because this team definitely needs that secondary scoring to have it balanced out. You can't just be relying on the top line or top two lines to do it for you. So I really pleased with how he's been playing. He's been putting the puck in the net, blocking shots. He hustles. So I really have enjoyed his play this year, even more so than last year.
And he has not really been scratched at all this year compared to the Trotz era. If correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's really been healthy scratched at all this year. Maybe once.
I can't think of any. I have to go back and look at look game by game, maybe sometime early in the season.
Yeah, I think when Reardon was doing some mixing and matching, I think he had had a couple of games he sat for, I think whether it was Yaskin or Stevenson early on, but he certainly has been consistently in the lineup majority of the year. Whether most of the time he's been on the third line. I think he's kind of been moved down a few times depending on what Reardon wanted to do, but he's the third line's usually his home. So again, he's just been playing well. Last few games for sure.
I did a little deep dive on his numbers out of curiosity, and one of the things that's interesting is he's playing almost 2 minutes per game more this year on average than he did last year. So that probably has a lot to do with the increase in his numbers. He's now at a career high in points this year, and he's taking more shots and more shot attempts than he has at any point in his career too. So, I mean, he's just really stepped up his game. He's getting, like you said, he's in most of the games. He's getting more time on ice in those games. And yeah, he's been really good lately. And that third line it seems like they've really found something. So they've been struggling in a lot of areas. If that third line can keep on clicking, it's going to be a really big benefit for them right now. They really need that scoring out of the bottom six.
Yep, no doubt. All right, so let's quickly move on to the final topic. We just want to make some predictions. I guess did we want to say where the Caps would end up at the end of the regular season, right? Kind of where in the Metro. If I were to pick right now where I think the Caps would end by the end of this regular season, I would say third in the Metro. They're currently second, just ahead of Columbus by a point. But I think the Islanders and Columbus are playing better than the Caps right now, and they look like they're going to continue to play better. It's not just, a flash in the pan. I do think the Caps, though, will stay top 3 in the Metro and play well enough to avoid falling to any of the wild card spots. Amanda, what do you think?
That was my prediction as well, third.
Okay.
I'd like to be wrong. I'd like for them to finish higher. But just the way they're playing right now. And, it could just be a slump, and it might be that a week from now or 2 weeks from now, we're looking back and laughing at ourselves for this prediction. And I hope we are. But they don't feel right now like a team that's going to win this division. So my prediction would be third. I think they will avoid the wild card. But if they do wind up in a wild card spot, it wouldn't shock me at this point.
Just don't be a wild card too, because I don't know if you're beating Tampa Bay in the first round.
Yeah, I don't want to find out.
No. Drew, what about you? What's your futuristic prediction?
Right now, the way that they are playing, which is just basically average, they could easily be on the couch in the first round if they don't get their act together, because right now they are currently tied with Montreal for the first wild card spot. The only reason why they're ahead of them is because they've apparently, I think it's because of, I think it might be regulation wins. But currently they have to get their, like I say, get their heads out of their butts, because they're only 2 points ahead of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's in the last wild card spot, and Pittsburgh's only 3 points ahead of Carolina, who's sitting in basically number 9 spot.
And the Metro division is tight as a tick. Like, there's no room for error for them. Like, they're almost playing like they think that they're guaranteed a playoff spot, and that's not the case.
If they play Tampa or the Islanders, they don't get out of the first round the way they're playing right now. They don't have right now. They just don't have. I don't think they can get by any of those two teams if they see them in the first round. Matter of fact, right now they're scheduled to play Columbus in the first round if it were to start tomorrow, and I don't think they can beat them in a 7-game series right now.
Yeah.
So I just the way that they're playing as we sit here. They're not exhibiting any confidence to me that they would get out of the first round matchup with anybody outside of maybe Montreal, Boston. But they're not going to see. I don't think they're going to see Boston in the first round at all, let alone Montreal. So right now the Islanders are
somehow it'll be the Penguins. I don't know how. Yeah, somehow it would be the Penguins.
Because the Islanders are playing the best of the Metro teams right now, and of course Tampa's playing the best of the Atlantic. They're 42-11-4. They're up 6-0 in the third right now on Dallas.
Oh my God!
How much of a dignity would it be to lose to Barry Trotz's Islanders in the first round? Oh, I can't even think about it.
And you know how motivated the Islanders would be? It would be, us against the world.
I don't want to think about it. That's terrible.
Well, when the Caps are playing well, I'm like the most confident guy ever, and I can picture them beating anyone. But the way it's gone lately, it's just like everyone else is like, okay, Caps, you've had yours, and now it's our time. Repeating will be very difficult, but again, there's some games left. If you can go in, head into the playoffs, on a 5-game win streak, or 4-1 their last 5, that'll be the best thing. But again, like last year, all lines were producing. So far this year, it seems like one line is hot while the others are ice cold. So it's all about getting on the same page. Would you agree?
I would, and I'm curious what you guys think about this road trip they're on. What's your prediction for the finishing record for the road? Obviously, they've already lost 1. So, what do you think for the other 5 games?
Which games are you talking about? Against who?
The next 5 were the rest of this road trip. San Jose tonight, then Anaheim, the Kings again, the Maple Leafs, and the Sabres. Okay, yeah. So, the rest of the 5 games. Yeah, I don't see tonight shaking out very well versus the Sharks. The Ducks are obviously struggling, but they've already beaten us once. I was at that game. That was awful.
Yeah, I remember. Kings and Maple Leafs, I don't know if you can beat the Maple Leafs. We haven't proven we can beat Toronto yet. And then Sabres, who have kind of fallen off. I hope, that'll be like a must-win. But
that win streak for them feels a long time ago, doesn't it?
Seriously, and that was kind of a surprise. We can maybe talk about next episode, surprise teams, how Buffalo has fallen off. But in these 5 games, I'd say 3-2 is like the best possible outcome that I would see happening.
I'm thinking 2-3. Yeah. I would go maybe Anaheim and the Kings. I don't think.
I'm not very optimistic. I mean, this is a 6-game road trip. I'm not real optimistic about it. I mean, right now they're 0-1. I don't see them winning in San Jose. They don't do very well on the West Coast. I mean, even Anaheim right now is just absolutely horrible. There's a chance they could win that game. A chance they could beat LA. I don't see them beating Toronto. And then Buffalo is kind of like a toss-up to me. But I would love to see them go 3-3 overall, at least break 500 because they need the points. But if they go 1-5 or 2-4, this team is in trouble.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about you got a possible 12 points and you only bring in 4.
Yeah, it's not good.
So I mean, on the homestand they went 4-1-1, 9 out of 12. That's not bad. But you go out on the road and you only bring 4 or less home. That's a problem.
I'm thinking
and so
2-1 from here on out. I think they beat Anaheim, and I don't know, maybe they can beat the Kings. I think they can probably beat Buffalo the way they're playing right now, but the Kings would be a toss-up. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence right now. I'm feeling like I need them to show us something because it's hard to stay positive.
Yeah,
they
have to prove
but
it.
The biggest problem with this is the fact that they play Anaheim on Sunday, then they turn around and play LA on Monday. They got one set of back-to-backs. Then they have to play Buffalo, which is the last road game on Saturday the 23rd, and then turn around and play back-to-back 2 matinee games, as a matter of fact, the 23rd against Buffalo and the 24th against New York, against the Rangers. So they have 2 sets of back-to-back in the next 6 games.
Yeah. And they have not done well on back-to-backs this year. So.
Nope, not one bit.
Well, I hope that they surprise us and next week we're all in a much better mood because this was one depressing podcast, I would say.
I hope they play well, and I hope we know where Bryce Harper is playing this coming season.
Well, it's not going to be in that. I don't think it's going to be with the Nats. I think it's going to go to. I think it's going to be Philly myself. That's my prediction.
Take it back.
We better get Wayne Simmons if Bryce goes to Philly.
Oh, the thought of having to watch the Nats play Bryce Harper all those times every year is just the worst. I can't even. It's the worst.
I know.
All
right, guys. That'll about do it for us. Thanks for listening in to the DC Powerplay, everyone. Again, please like, subscribe, share the podcast if you really enjoy it. And don't forget to check out dmvsportsnetwork.com and follow them on Twitter at DMV_SN. Again, I'm Subir signing off for Drew and Amanda as well. Thanks for listening in. It was nice talking to you guys.
All right. Have a good night.
Have a good evening.